My family took my sister's boyfriend on vacation instead of me, then begged for help when everything fell apart. My name's Ryan. I'm 27, and I rent a one-bedroom apartment just outside of Denver. I work in IT support for a healthcare software company, mostly remote. It's not glamorous, but it pays the bills. And more than anything, it gives me some space from my family, the people I thought I'd finally made peace with. Turns out, I was just ignoring the obvious. This whole thing started less than a month ago, around mid-March. I was at my parents' house for dinner, something I do every couple of weeks, more out of habit than anything else. My sister, Lily, was there. She's 24 and still lives at home. Spoiled in a way that's hard to explain unless you've lived next to her for 20 years. She doesn't get everything, just everything that counts. We were sitting at the table when my mom started talking about a trip they were planning. Some cabin resort in Aspen. Rustic meets luxury kind of deal. She even printed out the brochure. They were going to hike, unplug, maybe ride horses, the full experience. I asked just casually if I could come. I hadn't taken a real vacation in years, and I thought maybe it would be good for all of us to have some time together. My mom gave me this look like she felt bad for me. Then she explained that things were tight this year. The cabin only sleeps 4, and after taxes, they were a little strapped. She said she didn't want me to feel pressured to pay my way since rent's expensive and all that. I didn't push. I just said, okay, sure, no witties. I left their place that night, not even angry, just kind of numb. I kept thinking, maybe I misunderstood. Maybe it really was about money. Maybe they thought they were sparing me. A week later, I was working late in my apartment, around 9:30 p.m. Took a break, opened Facebook just to scroll for a few minutes. That's when I saw it. My mom had posted a photo. There they were, her, my dad, Lily, and Zach, Lily's boyfriend, standing on a cliff in Colorado, arms around each other, smiling like they were posing for a greeting card. The caption said, "Our family and our dear daughter with her new boyfriend, family together." I don't know what hit me harder, that they went without me, or that they brought Zach and called that our family. Zach, a guy Lily had only been seeing for 2 months. He was quiet, polite, the kind of guy who says, "Nice to meet you," and actually means it. I liked him. I still kind of do, which made it worse. Because if they just asked, if they said, "Hey, is it okay if Zach comes too?" I probably would have said yes. But they didn't ask. They just replaced me. I didn't say anything. Not to them, not to Zach, not even on the post. I just sat there, letting it sink in, letting it eat a hole straight through me. A week after they got back, it was Monday night. I had just finished dinner and was watching something on Netflix when there was a knock at my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it, and there they were. My mom, dad, and Lily, standing in the hallway. They looked wrecked, hair messy, eyes sunken like they hadn't slept in days. I didn't even say hello. I just stood there waiting. Mom started right in, talking fast, saying things had gone downhill fast. Their SUV had been stolen, dumped in a parking lot somewhere with the engine stripped out. My dad had invested money he borrowed from his own retirement, I'd find out later, into a business deal with some old friend. Turned out to be a scam. And Lily? She tried to help. Put some expenses on her credit card. Now she was maxed out and panicking. They needed help, just for a little while. A place to stay, maybe a small loan, just until things settled down. I told them no. Flat out no. Not because I didn't have the space. Not because I couldn't help. But because they had already shown me exactly where I stood. They stared at me like I had just thrown them out into a blizzard. Then they left, without saying another word. I didn't hear from them for a few days. Then things started to spiral in a way I didn't see coming. 2 days after I turned them away, there was silence. No calls, no texts, no emails. At first, it just felt weird. My mom, the queen of check-ins and guilt-laced group messages, suddenly vanished. Even Lily wasn't posting on social media. That alone was strange. No brunch pics, no dog selfies, no blurry sunsets. Everything had gone dark. For a moment, I thought maybe they were just ashamed. Maybe this would be their wake-up call. Maybe we'd all cool off, talk like adults. But once again, I underestimated them. Friday morning, I got a text from Zach. It was short. He just said, "Can we talk?" I replied, "Sure." He came over that evening. He looked exhausted, like he'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. He sat down, but didn't touch the drink I offered him. Then he hit me with it. He told me he didn't know I hadn't been invited on the trip. He thought I was just busy or couldn't make it. He said his stomach dropped when he saw my face in that Facebook post. He hadn't even wanted to go in the first place, but Lily insisted. Then he said he wanted out. Not just out of the conversation, out of the relationship. He'd been living with them since I said no. They dragged him into their mess, made him use his savings for food, told him it was temporary. My mom cornered him the night before, asked him what his long-term plans were with Lily, then suggested marriage, kids, even pulled out baby pictures like that would help. He was horrified, told me he hadn't even been with her long enough to meet her extended family, let alone talk about starting one. He said it felt like he'd joined a cult. So that morning, he broke up with her, packed his stuff, and left. That's when things started to shift. Sunday morning, I got a call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. When I played it back, it was my dad. It was the first time he'd reached out directly since they showed up at my door. His voice was cold. No apology, no explanation. Just, you've made your choice. We'll do things without you. I didn't think much of it at first. Then Monday came. I walked out to my car, keys in hand, ready to go to the store, and I froze. Written across my windshield, smeared in what looked like oil or black paint, were the words, "Family doesn't leave family." No note, no weaknesses. I filed a police report. They said they'd check nearby cameras, but I already knew no one would be caught. That same day, my bank account got flagged for suspicious activity. Someone had tried to access it from my dad's town. Maybe just a coincidence. I didn't call. Didn't confront anyone. Instead, I started planning. If they wanted a war, I could give them one. It would be on my terms, and they'd never see it coming. After the windshield, I stopped pretending this would blow over. I didn't go to the police again. I didn't confront anyone. I just went quiet and started digging. I knew my father had lines he didn't want crossed. People he owed money to. Things he'd rather not have in writing. It didn't take long to find one. Back in 2022, he used my social security number to co-sign a loan. I only found out because of a random soft credit pull I did last year. While I confronted him, he played dumb until I said the word lawyer. Then he begged me to let it go. Said he'd pay it off and close it. I never saw proof. I never followed up. But now, I saw an opportunity. I called the loan company and told them the truth. Sent an affidavit and a letter from a lawyer friend who owed me a favor. The account is now under investigation. His balance has gone up. His interest is frozen. He's banned from opening new credit lines until it's resolved. 3 days later, my mom texted me a photo of a letter she got from the bank. Then she called. I didn't answer. Her voicemail was just her, crying, asking me why I was doing this. She said, "We're family, and family forgives." I didn't answer. That night, Lily posted a story on Instagram. Black screen, white text. Betrayal is always loudest when it comes from those you trust. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was desperate. The next day, I went to see someone I hadn't talked to in over a year, my grandfather. My dad's dad. He lives in a small town about 40 minutes away. I'd always liked him. He was nothing like my father. Quiet, sharp, the kind of man who didn't say much, but when he did, people listened. When he opened the door, he just looked at me for a long second and said, "Took you long enough." We sat out on the porch. I told him everything, not just what they did recently, but everything. Years of it. How I was only ever useful when something was falling apart. He didn't interrupt, just listened. When I told him about the windshield, the loan, the fake apologies, all of it, he leaned back in his chair and let out this dry little laugh. Then he said something I'll never forget. People like your father didn't last long in 45. Big mouths. No honor. The kind of guy who'd sell you out just to save his coat. I didn't know what to say. Then he added, "Let them crawl, but don't let them forget the mud on their knees." He offered to help. Said he still had friends who could push buttons if needed. I told him not yet, but I didn't say no. The next morning, I received another message from my mother. This time, it was different. She said they wanted to meet. Just to talk. Clear the air. She said it would only be the three of them. Her, my dad, and Lily. They didn't know I'd already made other plans for that day. And they definitely didn't know I had invited someone else to join us. We agreed to meet at a quiet diner on the edge of town. Neutral ground. Not too public, but not isolated either. I got there early and chose a booth in the back. I was already seated when they walked in, Mom, Dad, and Lily. No Zach this time. He was gone. Just the three of them. They sat down like it was just another family dinner. Mom tried to smile. Dad looked annoyed before he even spoke. Lily wore sunglasses inside, probably for dramatic effect. They didn't order anything. They just started talking. Mom began with the usual. Family, forgiveness, misunderstandings, bad timing. Dad stayed quiet, which was unusual. He usually played the victim, but today he looked like someone who had something to lose. They offered to forget everything. If I agreed to stop escalating things. They said life was already hard enough. I told them I wasn't escalating anything. I was just done pretending. Then I told them something else. I told them something I'd been holding on to, waiting for the right moment. I said, by the way, do you remember that small business loan you applied for? The one tied to the Veterans Grant? The one where you doubled your income and listed yourself as active military? My dad's face froze. I leaned in and said, I sent them the real numbers and a copy of your DD-214. My mom's mouth opened like she wanted to speak, but nothing came out. I wasn't bluffing. My grandfather had given me the papers. He said he kept them just in case my dad ever tried pulling something like this with the VA again. Well, he had, and now it was being investigated for fraud. I stood up, ready to leave. That's when my grandfather walked in. He wasn't invited to sit. He just stood at the end of the table, arms crossed. My dad looked like he'd seen a ghost. Grandpa didn't say anything at first, just looked at him, the way you look at something broken that can't be fixed. Then, loud enough for the nearby tables to hear, he said, you always thought you were the smartest one in the room. You never figured out that being smart doesn't mean being honest. Then he looked at me, gave me a small smile, and added, I'm glad you didn't turn out like him. Then he walked out. And so did I. The fallout started almost right away. 3 days later, my dad's loan application was officially frozen, pending investigation. His business partner backed out of the deal. Probably heard whispers from someone who knew someone. My mom posted a long, rambling Facebook status about how families should forgive each other, not destroy each other. Lily posted a photo of herself crying, followed by a quote about how people reveal their true colors in hard times. I didn't comment. I didn't return the 24 phone calls that followed. Instead, I took another step. There was a family trust. My grandfather had set it up years ago. It wasn't huge, but it was stable. Something he wanted to pass on to his grandchildren one day. My dad had been quietly trying to convince him to move it all over to Lily. I told him, I'm not interested in family wealth. But I sat down with Grandpa again that week. I didn't even have to bring it up. He told me he'd already changed the paperwork. Lily was out. My dad's name, completely gone. Then he laughed and said, your dad was always good at playing the hero, until someone actually read the script. The next message I got from my parents wasn't a voicemail. It was a legal notice. Apparently, they were considering suing me. That's when I decided I was done playing defense. The notice wasn't serious. Not really. Just a canned letter from some local lawyer they probably found online. But it said enough. They were willing to cross the line. They thought they could scare me into backing off. What they didn't know was that I had already been preparing, quietly, methodically. I had 2 goals. Burn their lies to the ground, and make sure they never had the strength to crawl back out. The first step was public. I created a folder, screenshots, documents, messages, receipts. Every time they used me, lied to me, leaned on me. Proof of the loan in my name. The text from Lily, guilting me into helping with her debt. The VA fraud paperwork Grandpa had kept. Photos of the smashed windshield. And the message my dad left after I told him no. Everything. Then I posted it. Not some dramatic tell-all, just a post titled, This is what family looks like when you're only useful in a crisis. I posted it to a community forum. We all belong to local, tight-knit, mostly suburban people who love to gossip. The kind of place where my dad had always played the role of respected family man. Within hours, it spread. People commented. Some shared their own stories. A few recognized my dad's name and weren't surprised. By the next morning, 2 things had happened. First, my mom deleted her Facebook. Every post gone. Second, my dad lost his volunteer position on the local business council. Someone had forwarded them my post. But I wasn't done. I contacted the collection agency tied to Lily's credit card debt. Told them where she worked now. I also sent them a list of purchases she made on Zach's card, which he gave me after the breakup. Designer bags, concert tickets, a spa retreat. All in the same week they claimed they were barely surviving. He was more than happy to help. They froze her account. By the end of the week, she called me 6 times in one night. I didn't pick up, but the real hit came later. My dad had been trying to start a new business, something about property management. It wasn't active yet, but I found the LLC filing online. My mom was listed as the second manager. So, I called a friend who works in real estate law. The company hadn't completed its zoning permits, and there were problems. Wrong addresses, misreported income, enough to trigger a delay and a review. Within 3 days, the city froze the application and opened a formal investigation. I didn't tell them it was me, but they knew. This time, they didn't send threats or legal jargon. Just 2 words in an email, "Why, Ryan?" I didn't reply. Instead, I printed out the legal letter they had sent me, took it to Grandpa, handed it to him. He read it, then silently poured 2 glasses of bourbon, one for him, one for me. He raised his glass and said, "Your father was always good at writing checks with his mouth. Too bad he never learned how to cash them." Then he added, "They've done enough damage for now. But if they come back," he looked at me, "we'll give them a proper burial." I nodded. We drank. And then I started planning the final step. Because the house they live in, it's not really theirs. It was Grandpa's, and they were about to find out what it feels like to pack up in a hurry. 2 weeks after the city froze my dad's business account, everything started falling apart faster than I expected. Turns out, when your life is built on borrowed money, forged papers, and fake charm, all it takes is one solid push. That push was me. The city flagged his tax returns. Then came an audit. Someone, probably that retired accountant Grandpa knew, anonymously tipped off the local paper. They ran a small article about mismanaged funds and questionable veterans' business claims. They didn't name him directly, but everyone in town who read it knew exactly who it was. One by one, his investors pulled out. Not because they cared about ethics, but because they smelled fire and didn't want to get burned. Then came the final blow. My dad had taken out a second mortgage on the house he and my mom lived in. Only, the house wasn't legally his. It was still in Grandpa's name. Something he conveniently forgot when he used forged documents to support the loan. The bank called. Grandpa answered. And instead of covering for him, he handed over the real deed. That's when Grandpa made his final move. He changed the trust, officially, legally. The house and the land it sits on were transferred into a family trust with one name on it. Mine. Not Lily's. Not my mother's. And definitely not a clause for my father. They were given 30 days to leave. They didn't fight it. Not publicly. But the last week before the move, something strange happened. I got a message from a woman I didn't recognize. She said she used to be my dad's assistant back when he ran that chain of car dealerships. His one semi-successful business. She said she'd watched everything unfold and thought I should know something. My dad had another kid. Not recently. Years ago. A half-brother. From an affair he had while my mom was pregnant with Lily. I didn't know what to do with that information. Still don't. But somehow it explained a lot. Why he treated Lily like royalty. Why he treated me like I was barely there. Like I was the proof he didn't run fast enough. I didn't tell Lily. I don't think I ever will. The last day before the eviction, they didn't say a word. They were packing boxes. Lily cried, posting cryptic quotes online about being cut off by her own blood. My mom looked like she had aged 10 years in a week. My dad, he just looked tired. Before they left, he dropped a note in Grandpa's mailbox. I never saw it. Grandpa burned it in the fire pit without reading it. When I asked him what it said, he just shrugged and said, "I don't care." I've been reading his excuses for 30 years. Now, they live in a rented house on the outskirts of town. I heard from someone that my dad's trying to get some consulting work. For a friend who doesn't know any better. Lily's working retail again. Mom's been quiet. Too quiet. I visit Grandpa once a week. We sit on the porch and drink coffee. Sometimes we talk. Sometimes we just listen to the silence. One time, he took out an old hunting knife and handed it to me. I thought it was a sentimental gesture. But he said, this was my father's. He used it to cut ropes when the barn caught fire in '42. Sometimes you gotta cut things loose before they pull you under. Then he gave me that crooked old man smile and said, "You did good, Ryan. You didn't just get up, you finished it." And he was right. It had been a few months since the eviction. My life was finally starting to feel settled. I was seeing someone new, working toward a promotion. Even thinking about getting a dog. I hadn't heard from my parents in weeks, which was unusual considering my dad's streak of monthly guilt messages. Then one came out of nowhere, but it wasn't from him. It was from a lawyer, and not one of those sketchy, low-tier ones. This was a real estate attorney from out of state. The subject line read, "Urgent regarding purchase of property by Mr. Ronald K., my dad's full name." I opened it, assuming it was spam. It wasn't. Apparently, my dad had bought a small piece of land outside of town, not under his own name, through Cashel, LLC. The manager listed was someone he'd worked with decades ago. It was remote, just trees and dirt. No tiritias, no permits. But here's the kicker. He'd submitted blueprints for a self-sustaining cabin. Off-grid living, buried in the paperwork. No address listed publicly. The lawyer had no idea who I was at first. He said he'd been hired to handle the permits, but while cross-referencing my grandfather's deed of trust, found my name. Because the properties were close. Too close. My dad wanted to live out there. Alone. Off the grid. Completely isolated. I didn't know what to make of it. It didn't seem like him. He thrived on attention, on control. But this looked like the exit plan of a man who had no more cards left to play. At first, I didn't tell Grandpa. Thought maybe it was better if he didn't know. But then last week, Grandpa called me over. He had that look again, the one that said he was already 5 steps ahead. Got a call, he said. An old friend said your dad's been snooping around the city assessor's office, asking about boundary lines, permits, trying to redraw maps, quietly. I nodded and told him what I found. He didn't say much, just nodded back. Then he said, "You know why he's doing this, right?" I shrugged. "He's not trying to disappear," Grandpa said. "He's trying to wait us out." That hadn't even occurred to me, but it made sense. My dad wasn't running. He was hiding, laying low, waiting for time to pass, for the smoke to clear, so he could come back, play humble, rewrite the story. Grandpa pulled out a small envelope and handed it to me. Inside was a deed, not to our property, to the land next to the one my father had just bought. Grandpa had purchased it through someone else a week before. He looked at me and grinned. "If he wants to disappear into the woods," he said, "he'll have to look at my house every morning." I didn't even ask how he pulled it off. But I knew one thing. This wasn't over. My dad wasn't finished. He was just waiting. But now, so were we. And he has no idea who's watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and subscribe for more real-life family dramas. Let me know in the comments what you think about today's story. Was it fair or totally messed up? See you in the next one.